All right, hi guys. There's gonna be a lot of people gone in class tomorrow, so I thought I'd turn this lesson into a quick video lesson so that if you're missing, you can kind of see what you're missing. So here's what we're working on. The learning target in class is gonna be I can describe and explain the association observed in data. We want to be able to describe and explain data, and we're going to be talking specifically about that word association. So, for your notes, let's talk about what is association, because that's kind of the first question. What is it? So, we know we get data from research, and you go out and collect data through the process of doing things like surveys or a science research project. And when you get that data, an association is a relationship between the two numerical variables. So you have two variables that you are measuring. For instance, in class we've been talking about trees a lot and how you can measure things like how wide is the tree's diameter and how tall is the tree. Well, that's two variables, the width and the height. And so an association is basically that relationship between those two variables. Now here's what it looks like. We're going to learn how to describe association. So there's some key things. Form and direction are some of the things we always talk about. When I say form, right now for our class, I'm really talking about is it linear or nonlinear? And for direction, I'm talking about is it positive or is it negative? And we know linear and nonlinear basically means does the data look like it goes in a line or does it not look like a line? And positive or negative is referring to the slope. Does it have a positive slope or a negative slope? So to kind of look at some random data, here's a graph you can kind of look at, and you can tell by looking at the data that there is a negative linear association. The data is going down, looks kind of in the direction of a line, so we say it's a negative linear association. Let's look at an example. Let's describe the association in some graphs. So I'm going to kind of put some random graphs up here and talk about them. This first graph, I would say, has a negative relationship between the variables. The data is going in a downwards direction, but it doesn't look linear to me. It actually looks a little more curved. So I would say it's nonlinear data. This data looks more like it has a positive relationship, and I could see that it goes more in a linear trend. So I would say it's a positive linear association. There's something else too when you're describing association. Another really important thing is the strength of the association. So we organize it into three levels. You can have a strong, a moderate, or a weak association. And what that basically means is this. A strong association is when all the data is really close to that line. I mean, look at that example picture. All the data is practically touching the line. That's a really strong association, and it's a negative slope, it's linear, so we say it's strong, negative, and linear. There's kind of like three descriptors there. Moderate association would be something more like this graph, where the points are kind of sprinkled out. They're still close to the line, but they're getting a little farther away. So again, I would say this is a moderate, negative, linear association. And then a weak one, you can kind of imagine a weak association. A weak would be like this, it's a scatter plot with points everywhere, and if I tried to say it was linear, it's kind of a stretch. Like in that graph, I'm like, it doesn't really look like a line, maybe a little bit. So I would say it's a weak, positive, linear association. Its points are positively going up, but it's pretty weak linear association. And not very many of the points are touching that line. So let's look at some data, some actual real life data, some problems. So here's a graph where we have some data, and if you look closely at the graph, there's two variables. The x-axis is the board length and the y-axis is time. And when I look at this, I think there's a very strong linear association. I think there's a strong positive linear association. And I'm going to be really good with my sentence. Look what I'm going to write. I'm going to write there's a strong positive linear association between board length and time. That between board length and time, that's an important part of my sentence. I'm trying to tell everyone that it's between those two variables that we're measuring. So, and I could easily sketch a line to kind of prove what I'm talking about. All right, so how about another example? How about we talk about fuel efficiency? So here's the example. Consumer Reports did some research on fuel efficiency of cars in comparison to the weight of the vehicle. Now, you know, when you're buying a new car, a lot of people look for how fuel efficient it is. So how many, miles per gallon do I get with my gas? And this research was done based on the size of the car. So looking at light cars like this little car, or big heavy cars like let's look like a Hummer, and looking at what's the fuel efficiency like. So here's the data that was collected by the research team. You can see a line drawn through the data. The x-axis is the weight of the cars, and the y-axis is the fuel efficiency. So as you're going down the x-axis, you'll notice the weight gets heavier and heavier, but you'll notice the fuel efficiency drops. So the gas mileage is getting worse as the car gets heavier. So like a big Hummer has pretty bad gas mileage. And so here's what I'm going to write for my association sentence. I see that there is a moderate, negative, linear association. And I'm going to say between the weight of the car and fuel efficiency. And that would be a good sentence to kind of describe this. So again, kind of three things. There is a moderate, negative, linear association between weight of the car and fuel efficiency. All right, so another example here. How about this one? The graph below compares the age and number of pets for a certain population. So someone goes out and does some research and says, how old are you and how many pets do you have? So they're kind of measuring two things, the person's age and how many pets they have. So those are the two variables. And this is what they find. What would you write for a sentence for this one? Well, looking at the data, it's kind of a little bit more random on this one. For me to say it's linear feels like quite a stretch. I don't really see a linear pattern, to be honest. So I would say the data looks nonlinear. I don't think it looks like a line. And there really appears to be no association between age and number of pets, which really, think about it, the older you get doesn't mean the more pets you have, or the younger you get doesn't really mean the more pets you have. There's not really a relationship between your age and the pets you have at home. So I would say there's no association. No, and it's nonlinear data. All right, so one last thing, outliers. You've probably heard of an outlier before, but an outlier can throw your data off sometimes. This is a piece of data that does not seem to fit the overall pattern. You might have all this data in a really good line and then one random point that doesn't fit. And that can sometimes happen. I mean, research in real life, numbers get messy. So sometimes you get that random outlier. Here's a really good example of a graph that, all the points are kind of together in a nice curve, and then there's that random outlier point. So you kind of got to look out for those once in a while because they throw people off. Okay, so to quickly summarize this video, here's the big thing you need to walk away knowing. When you're describing association, there are three things we look for: strength, direction, and form. So strength, direction, and form. And if you can write a good sentence with those three pieces in it, then you kind of have how to describe association. You have that piece down when it comes to studying data. All right, hope that helped. If I went too fast, please go back, watch parts of it again. It was kind of a quick video. All right, thanks guys, bye.